Hello friends! I hope you're all having a wonderful, brilliant day. My name is Will, and today we're going to talk about some trans book recommendations, specifically trans fiction book recommendations, ranging from all types of fiction. And this is my channel, NB Reads. So I did one of these videos more than 2 years ago of like an extensive list of all the books that I've read that either had trans characters or were written by like a trans author or side character or something like that. And I wanted to like continue that tradition. So I have like an archive of like all the trans books that I've ever read as videos on YouTube. So these are all fiction books. I think that was the same with the other one. I'm doing this because of the Trans Rights Readathon, which really spurred me to finally put a video like this out there again. And so I will leave links to the Trans Rights Readathon and how to know about it. It's going on right now. If you want to join, there's still some time, I think. Otherwise, always read trans books. Why not? They're excellent. I am also trans, by the way, if you didn't know if I was credible or not to recommend these books. I have purposefully left out a couple of books because they're only published by St. Martin's Press. I will also link links to the St. Martin's Press boycott down below. I'm not following it entirely and will be recommending some books that St. Martin's Press publishes, but I will guide you to how to read the books without supporting St. Martin's Press and where you can find them. So we'll start off this list with a banger that I just finished last night, Depart Depart by Sim Kern, the creator, I guess, of the Trans Rights Readathon. This is about a trans boy that is caught in the middle of a climate disaster. There's a flood. He needs to flee and he's caught at this shelter where he tries to find like his community in this new setting while he has to surround himself with like all these other people that are wildly different from him in this crisis, not knowing if his friends or family are safe and just trying to cope. It's a small novella, but it really, really packs a punch. It has so much in it, both like political commentary, social commentary, but it also has this like supernatural element where he keeps seeing his dead grandpa, I believe. So it talks about like being Jewish, the cultural heritage of that, and how that presents itself in like a new crisis. So it's like it correlates the Holocaust to what he's going through now. It's really, really good. I will put some maybe like ratings or something down here so you can see what I thought about each and every book, but this is just like a short description of each book so that you can look them up yourself. This is amazing. Really packs a punch. The next one is The 30 Names of Night by Sain Yuka Dar. This is about this Syrian trans boy living in Manhattan whose mother has died 5 years previously, and he keeps seeing her ghost. And the only way he like copes with his grief is to paint these murals on walls anonymously. And interspersed with that, we have these stories of another Syrian artist, that her diary essentially that's been like speckled throughout it. And similarly to Depart Depart, it has this element of learning about your cultural heritage, what your people has gone through, the queerness within your history, and how you can learn from that, find comfort in knowing these things about other people in your family, through your culture. It's really beautiful. And I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. It's lyrical, beautifully written, a great read. Next we have Lote by Sullivan Reinhold. This book is not on paper very queer, but the queer context is everywhere in this book. There is one very specifically trans character in this, and our main character is also very like gender queer and fluid, but it talks less about these specific trans and queer terms that we know today, and it's more woven into the context of the story and the messaging of it. You follow this one person who is kind of like a little bit like a scam artist and gets these fixations with queer Black historical figures that haven't really been talked about throughout history. they fake their way into this like school to learn more about their current fixation. And so it's about like Black history, queer characters, people through history, how they've been forgotten and how their history is not in certain texts. The writing of this is very unique. It's kind of dense in a way because we get so many like descriptions of like photographs and texts in it, and not everything is very legible, and it's quite long, but it's one of those books where everything is not spelled out, and there is like so much in this that is just absolutely amazing. I'm so impressed by Shola. This is incredible and a must read. Then we have 2 books by the same author, Any Other City by Hazel Jane Plante and Little Blue Encyclopedia for Vivian. This is her first book, and then this is her second book. Hazel Jane Plante is like an auto-bi author for me now. These are both really, really good. This is about this trans woman who has a crush on her trans straight friend. She just died, and this book is written for Vivian and chronicles her story and their story together through talking about characters from Vivian's favorite show called Little Blue, and it's written like with the alphabets and all the characters who fit into the alphabet, and it's just really, really good. Hazel J. Plante has this way of like combining very profound moments and reflections with like very casual writing. It does feel like the main character wrote this, but it's just like brilliantly written. It feels very real. The characters are very relatable and real. And the end scene in this, I read it 2 nights ago and I was just crying. It's absolutely amazing, and I do actually like this one more than Any Other City. Any Other City is like a fake memoir where the main character writes an author thank you to Hazel Jane Plante in the beginning, which I think is just absolutely brilliant. This is about a musician, trans woman musician. The first part is written to her first love, and the second part is written to her last love. It's amazing. Both of these books have a lot of references to music and the importance of music in transness and yourself, and just generally like media, how it shapes us as people. Both excellent, 5 stars. Highly recommend this if you want to read some amazing trans women writing. Like, wow. Then we have Then the Grey Heaven by Ree Katz. This story is same as like the Little Blue Encyclopedia, is about trans grief, and our main character has just lost their partner and is trying to deal with the grief and then also what to do with their ashes, which they're left with. This one is also about like trans community and how we show up for each other, even people we don't know, because we have this inherent community and understanding of each other because of our queerness. I read this book at just the right time, and I think that's why I gave it 5 stars. It does have that kind of indie published writing style, but I just really, really appreciate this and loved it so much. Highly recommend. I highlighted and wrote a bunch of stuff in this because it just felt really real to me. Here we have Detransition Baby by Tori Peters, which is obviously a book that's gotten a lot of hype and a lot of attention, and I think deservingly so. It has a really interesting premise. It follows 3 different characters, kind of. Reese, who is a trans woman who previously dated another trans woman called Amy, who kind of detransitioned after experiencing transphobia and now goes by Ames. And Ames has gotten a co-worker, Katrina, pregnant. Reese has always wanted to be a mother. These 3 characters have to work together, wondering like, can they raise this baby together? It's sort of like a bizarre plot in a way, but I think when it comes to like raising children and families, there's so many different ways a family can look, and I like that this book explores that through like mother and gender and these 3 characters. To be honest, I don't remember a lot about this book, like the plot and how I felt about it. I do remember really liking it. I think I probably gave it 4 stars, And I also did a podcast of this, I believe, at the volunteer bookstore where I work, who has like a podcast. So it's kind of funny that I don't remember a lot about this book. I guess it wasn't very memorable, but I do remember really enjoying reading this. Then I have two books by a non-binary author. This is McElroy's first and second book, The Atmospherians, which follows this woman who gets canceled and then decides to join her friend in starting a cult that's supposed to rid men of their toxic masculinity. This book is not queer in the literal sense. There's no like really queer characters, and same goes for People Collide, which is a what's called body swap story between a married couple. So neither of these are specifically like trans or queer, but I think the themes in this, how this one plays with like gender expectations, toxic masculinity, what's the role, how does your gender affect you in society, and this one being like a very specific like body swap story, I think the transness and queerness of like the author really comes through, and I do commend the author for like writing stories that are not queer but just like has amazing reflections on like a more cis straight society and narrative. This is an author for me. I think Isle is very creative in their contemporary literary fiction writing. Liked both these a lot, but this was a 5-star. I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. Then we have The Fifth Wound by Aurora Mattia, which is more of a recent read that I read in a reading vlog where I read Bookstagrammer's favorite books of 2023. I did a lot of explanation of this book, but essentially it's a very surreal meta experience. It is written super lyrically and very writing just like runs, and there's a lot of words, and sometimes it's very hard to understand the story, but it's amazing. It's excellent, and just like, trust me, give it a shot. This follows Aurora, who's our main character / author, who is in love with Ezekiel. And throughout it, there is a thread about their story, a love story, a T for T story with Aurora and Ezekiel. But it also has these parts where Aurora's talking about transphobic experiences that she's had. It's quite difficult to read at times because it is very graphic and just a lot of difficult experiences. But then it also weaves in like more speculative elements of Aurora having affairs with a siren or being in space on a spaceship. And there's a little bit of time travel and like these small speculative elements that just like heighten the story a lot. I love this. It was almost a 5-star, and I'm gonna read anything that Aurora Mattia ever writes. Highly recommend. This is OkPsyche by Anna Johanna De Niro. This follows an older trans woman who came out later in her life, and she's feeling very lonely, and she doesn't have a great relationship with her son because of her transness and her divorce with her ex-wife. And so she's trying to rekindle a relationship with her son and also find love again and belonging. It also has a speculative element, which is really cool. It's written in second person, which is unique and challenging at times. But I did really, really enjoy this book. I didn't mention this when I originally reviewed it, but I think OkPsyche is a reflection on OkCupid, the dating app, but switched it with Psyche. And I do think that the parts that are focused on Psyche and Cupid's mythological history kind of went over my head a little bit. So there's definitely things in this that I didn't see, but this is really good. I enjoyed it a lot, highlighted it a lot, and I recommend this book. Next up, we have Sorrowland by River Solomon. This book is also published by St. Martin's Press. This specific copy is published by Murky Books, which is a press under Penguin Random House, where you can alternatively get the book if you don't want to support St. Martin's Press right now. This follows our main character who kind of runs away from a black cult and raises 2 twins in the forest until they're like 4 years old, and then they are forced to flee and sort of join the real world again. This book is fantastic. I love a good mushroom element, like sci-fi element. I thought that was fantastic. It's very well written. I was intrigued the entire time. And I remember I listened to this as an audiobook, and it was such a good audiobook and immersive experience that I just thought that I'd read it physically, which rarely, if ever, happens to me. Just a fascinating read. The history of this cult, what we learn about the main character's past. River Solomon is trans, non-binary, I believe, genderqueer, and the main character has a very fluid understanding of their gender, and that shows also in the way that they raise their kids. It's just a very cool, amazing, important book. Highly recommend. Here is The Membranes by Chi Ta-wei. This was originally written in the 90s and is a Taiwanese classic, sort of. Follows this woman who works with skincare in a futuristic society where everyone lives under the ocean. It's about her learning about her mother's past, her own history, and weird things happen. The sci-fi element in this book is so fucking good. The reveal is amazing, although quite out there, but it's just a really fascinating read. It's really well written. I really enjoyed this book, and although the transness is not extremely explicit, it's clearly implied in a way that I have no doubts that this belongs on a trans book recommendation list. Amazing read, highly recommend. This is just a really fun time in a very profound, important way. Enjoyed this a lot. Here we have Small Beauty by Jiao Qiang Wilson Yang. This was quite a while since I read it, and it's also one of those books that didn't stick with me a lot. I think because it is quite quiet and lyrical and doesn't have a lot of plot, which is usually what makes me remember a book. This follows a woman who moves away from her town, I believe, after her cousin's death. And after that, I don't really remember what happens. I do remember that there's like a speculative element. There is, explores like racism a little bit, and it's well written. It talks a lot about transness, being a mixed race person. It talks about death, intersectionality within a community. She has some reflections on like members from her old community and the people she's meeting now at this new place she's at. Recommend. I think I gave it 3 stars, but yeah, all the ratings will be somewhere for all these books. Here we have Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars by Kai Ching Tum. This is like a magical realism story following our main character. She's kind of a young adult / older teenager. She runs away from home because of her transphobic, I forgot the word for transphobic parents, and leaves her little sister behind, I believe. And in this new town, she finds this group of trans femmes and trans women who are super kick-ass. They have all these different like quirky, weird abilities and powers, and it's just like a magical city. So this one is very like just magical and silly in many of the ways that the story is, using these different magic and settings to explore transness and the stories of these women and the way they rise up against the authorities in this city. It is on the surface just very fun and fun ride, fun, silly, quirky, those are the words. But it has the deeper sense of community, of the stories of all these women, the reflections on how their magical abilities represent and what that means to them. Great read, really fun. How many times do I have to say fun? It's fun. Let's take a little coffee break. We're like almost halfway through. I think I had like 33 books on this list. Here we have a little gem called Rainbear by Never Angeline North. This is a speculative, weird fiction book originally following this woman who works at a cafe that kind of exists nowhere. You can't really leave it. She sleeps there, and she has a strange relationship with the man working there. And one day she like dives through this door that leads her within another story, which is, I think, inspired by Jewish folk tales. And then it goes into another story within that story, and then someone tells a diary excerpt, and it's just, I think, story within story within story, and it never really ties back to the first story, which originally frustrated me, but I gave this 5 stars. I Absolutely loved it. It has a speculative randomness element that I just really enjoy reading about. It is really exciting and fun at certain parts, but then also dives deeper into what are the themes of this? I don't really know. I don't know how to explain it. I just wish this book had more hype. And I highlighted so many things because I just thought it was really fun to read. In the beginning of this book, there's a text that says, "The scanning, uploading, and distribution of this book via internet or any means without the permission of the author is awesome. Please share this book by any means possible. Pirate other books too while you're at it. Shoplift them from bookstores. Property is theft and capitalism." Which I just think is really good and excellent. It's just like a very, Angeline North, cool person, anarchist, loved it. Then we have, guess, like a little modern classic, Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawler, who blurbs everything nowadays. This is about Paul, who's a shapeshifter, and they just kind of change their appearance according to what sexual preferences their partner has, what situations they have. It is so brash, and Paul is just such a flawed character. They have so many judgments about other queer people that I feel like if you're cis and straight and you're reading this, just know that Paul is kind of problematic, you know? And I think if you're queer and you're reading this, you can see how much internalized queerphobia Paul deals with. And it's like difficult to read sometimes because just like frustrated at them. But it also brings a lot of funny experiences, and I do think it's a good critique of a lot of the thoughts and judgments we have within the queer community. It deals with gatekeeping within the queer community, and it's just very evident with Paul, and like going into the book understanding that Paul is a very flawed character. I think you'll enjoy this much more. I definitely had a good time with it. I listened to it as an audiobook. Then we have another really cool writer. This is Isabel Wadner's We Are Made of Diamond Stuff. Isabel Wadner has 2 other books that I am just dying to read because this was super unique. It's another book that I don't really know how to explain, honestly. It follows Shay, who works at this hotel where weird things happen, like, I don't know, sneakers and tigers. I don't know how to explain this book. It's described as like anarchic joy, which I really love. It is quite bizarre at times, the way the story is told, the way it jumps from different settings without having that travel time in between. I did not know what was going on at all times of this book, but it's just such a good critique of like colonialism, capitalism, individualism, what else ism? And follows like the working class queer experience in Britain. I don't know exactly remember where this takes place, but it's a great speculative work of fiction. And if you like, for example, like Rainbear and this type of stuff, it's odd, and I love that a lot. Great writing, funny at times, strange, weird reflections, recommend. And then one of my, if not my favorite book of last year, My Volcano by John Elizabeth Stinson. This is kind of like a panorama book that follows this volcano that breaks out in the middle of New York, and you follow many different people who have different experiences during this time and other times. I'm not going to talk about all of the perspectives, but there is one, for example, trans man who notices that there's like another version of him. The way this tackles like climate change and all these different perspectives all across the world is absolutely incredible. Adore this book to death. Written amazingly. You follow like a little boy who's transported way into the past during the Spanish Inquisition, I believe, and you follow this man who's like obsessed with this volcano god who records himself 24 hours a day and like has it as a live stream online. A lot of other really cool perspective. I believe there's a trans femme perspective in here too, and she works at a place where people can go and just destroy things or do whatever in this little room. Just a really, really cool book. John Elizabeth Stinson, the author, is also trans. Has another book that I haven't read called Vanishing Monuments. Amazing, highly recommend. This is just absolutely brilliant. This is a sci-fi, just pure sci-fi for once. In my previous book recommendation video of trans fiction books, I recommend a lot more sci-fi and fantasy if you want to check that out. But my tastes have kind of shifted, so there's less on this list. Future Feeling by Joss Lake. This is about this bitter trans man who kind of hates this Plante daddy, other influencer trans man, and casts a curse on him with his witch roommate. And then it lands on another trans person who does not deserve any of this. And the main character and this trans influencer daddy, plant daddy, have to work together to bring this other trans person that he accidentally cursed out of like depression. But it has this really cool element of trans care that are these like gods that help and care for trans people. And it has like cool sci-fi gadgets and elements sprinkled throughout this book, which I really enjoyed. It is sort of that book that's just like, this is written for trans-masked people, trans men, non-binary people. If you have this lived experience, you're gonna get so much out of this book. And I love that the book is written that way because there's just so many nuggets that like I feel like only a trans-masked person would really understand. And for that, I really love and adore this book. Then we have two books by the brilliant Alison Rumfitt. This is Brainworms and Tell Me I'm Worthless. Her books are also published by St. Martin's Press. This book specifically is published by Cypher Press, which originally published both of these books in the UK. Cypher Press also has ebooks available if you go to their website. I will link Cypher Press down below. They also are an independent publisher publishing and highlighting queer fiction and nonfiction books. So it's a great way of supporting that press. If you want to read Alison Rumfitt, they have e-copies and physical copies of both of these books. So that's where I recommend getting a hold of these if you're interested in reading Alison Rumfitt. Don't support St. Martin's Press. This is the first book I read, and I never really got a chance to talk about it. It's a horror. It follows this trans woman who lives in this dingy apartment, and she starts like imagining things and being haunted by this one experience she had with two other friends in her past where they entered this haunted house and one of the friends disappeared. I believe that is the story. And then in now time, there's this other person who is a TERF and she's awful. And there's a trans man in this who's just kind of also awful. It's very much like a haunted house story, but it's done brilliantly. And I'm actually kind of itching to reread this with this new sense of love for horror that I have. But it was just like great trans horror haunted house story. Highly recommend. But yeah, look up trigger warnings because it is horror and it has some like kinky, weird shit in it as well. Speaking of kinky, weird shit, Brainworms. This explores kink for parasites and transphobia, how it rots the brain literally with brainworms. It explores a lot of kink. I feel like the main theme of this is just kink, but also transphobia. You follow this main character who experienced like a horrible incident at the place they volunteer at, which is like a trans queer help center where someone was killed and our main character survived this attack at the beginning of the book. It's absolutely amazing the way all these characters tie together, like everything from the attack to the ending, like how these characters are connected. I feel like I never talked about that. Love that. It's just, this is Alison Rumfitt is above and beyond. It is really, really nasty. I have to tell you, it's really, 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 really nasty. And do not take that with a grain of salt. The author also put a trigger warning in the middle of the book, so I feel like that tells you everything you need to know. Another horror, this is Corrupted Vessels by Briar Ripley Page. This copy has a novella and a short story in it. It follows these people who start squatting in this abandoned house. One of them believes that angels is real, and the other is kind of naive and just follows this person. And they believe that they are meant to save humanity. Pretty much all the characters in this book is trans. It is kind of depressing, which I feel like I didn't talk about when I first read it, it's just sad, and its ending is quite sad, but I also found it very interesting, like the element of, is the angels real, is it not, do we ever get to know? But I enjoyed the trans sex in this. I enjoyed the characters, the gender nonconformity within their transness even. I just thought it was well written. This is Hell Followed With Us. This is a young adult dystopian where the world got ended. Apocalypse was caused by this religious cult with this virus, and our main character is a trans guy who grew up in this cult but essentially tries to escape, and he is the key to how the cult is planning to really take over the world at the end of the world. And so he escapes, he finds this queer community within the wreckage now that is now the world, and for the first time finally has the time to be around his community and really explore his transness. I think that was really good. It's quite a page turner, and I enjoyed it a lot. So if you're looking for trans, queer, dystopian, sci-fi, horror, fiction, this is a good one. This is The Call Out by Kat Fitzpatrick. This follows 7 characters, 6 of who are trans women, lesbians. It is a drama that takes place in Brooklyn between these characters, but the great thing about this book is that it's all written in verse and it's all rhyming, which creates for so many funny lines and funny rhymes within this story. Has so much reflection on community call-out culture, cancel culture within a marginalized community, but also has these really funny, cringy moments between these characters, choices they make, things they say, how all of the characters kind of woven in together, and our main character is like unlikable in a way, and just kind of judgy and on the sidelines of all of these characters. Great conversations, fun, excellent read with a lot of quality content. Highly recommend this. It's a super unique book. 2 books by Megan Milks, who is non-binary. This is their debut, Margaret and the Missing of the Missing Body. It's a coming-of-age queer story with a magical element. I think it has a trigger warning for EDs. I honestly don't remember what this book is about. Right. So this follows Margaret, who was part of this like mystery solving club with her 2 other friends when she was smaller, but now that they've all entered high school, it isn't like it was when they were kids, and she does not want to grow up. She develops an eating disorder, lands at this care facility, and magical things happen that reveal a lot about her inner workings and thoughts. This is more of just like generally queer and doesn't have a lot of transness in it, but I thought I would mention it because the author is trans and because I'm going to talk about Slug and Other Stories, which is a short story collection that is absolutely brilliant. Love Slug and Other Stories. Super queer, some are trans, has like a theme and focus on bodies morphing and changing and the fluidity of gender through species and time. Just very fascinating, sometimes silly, very profound. Love this type of short story collection. The formatting of this is also very diverse, the way the different stories are told. One is like a choose your own adventure. It's just really fun. Highly recommend this. I thought I would mention Walking Practice. This is translated from Korean. Do I want to say Korean? Oh boy. I want to say Korean. I couldn't find a lot of information by Dolki Min, but whenever they're talked about with they, them pronouns. So I'm thinking maybe non-binary. This story in itself, I do think is quite trans because it's about this alien who comes down on Earth and has lived here for so long, and the only thing they can eat is humans. And so they go on this dating apps to have sex with humans and eat them, and always have to shapeshift their body into different genders depending on who they're having sex with in this app. It's not written out trans, but the way the book reflects on gender and how people react to different genders and the gendered experiences that they have, I think is a very trans subject, at least. It is less about the gory sci-fi element of this book and more about the just everyday experiences of this alien who's kind of has this body that just morphs and is kind of gross and is described in almost a children's drawing of an alien cartoon way, but with these more gory elements because they're slurping up humans, you know? Recommend. And here we have another recent reads. This is Ponyboy by Elliot Duncan. Follows Ponyboy, who's together with a lesbian who does not want to date Ponyboy if he's trans, which he is, really. And he is living in Paris, has a drug problem, and doesn't know how to deal with his feelings of being trans. He doesn't know how to handle his relationships, his feelings of love and being lost in the world in general. And this drug addiction that he has just escalates and does not help him whatsoever. And it's very sad, difficult to read, also because Ponyboy makes such bad choices throughout this whole book. It's like hard to watch, and he's definitely like a flawed gray character. I think the trans parts of this book were very relatable and well written, which I do think made me like this book a lot more than I kind of would have. And for anyone watching, what is the obsession with Ponyboy among trans men? Because I know there's a lot of people, a lot of trans masc and trans men that are called Ponyboy and also identify with that character. Is it from The Outsiders? Why is that? I was trying to find information on this, but I cannot find anything about it. I wanted someone to just write an essay on it because I don't know. And maybe there's like an artist or something that's called Ponyboy. I am not sure. So if you know anything about this, let me know. Then we have 3 books that I kind of like enjoyed less, but I would definitely like to talk about. The first one is A Safe Girl to Love by Casey Platt. Casey Platt is quite a renowned name within the trans community, trans women writing stories about trans people, specifically trans women as well. This is a short story collection. I don't remember a lot about this book. I specifically remember someone who was like stealing E from something, but other than that, I barely remember this book. I think I gave it 3 stars, but it chronicles the story of like all these different trans women. I believe the characters in these short stories connect with other Casey Platt characters from other books, like maybe A Dream of a Woman, which is also quite famous. This is the only book I have read by Casey Platt, and I would be very curious to pick up her other works just to see if maybe there's something for me now, because it was quite a while ago since I read this short story collection. I think what is fun about her books is how the characters connect and come in and out of her different short story collections and stuff like that, which is something that an element that I do really like, but I haven't explored properly with this author, and which is why I think I need to read more of her works. So I don't have a lot to say on this, unfortunately. 11 unique short stories that stretch from a rural Canadian Mennonite town to a hipster gay bar in Brooklyn, featuring young trans women stumbling through loss, sex, harassment, and love. Then we have Trans-Galactic Bike Ride. Edited by Lydia Rogue. It says, feminist bicycle science fiction stories of transgender and non-binary adventures. This is really fun, okay? I think anthologies are just generally not my favorite. Some of them are kind of more leaning towards young adult, but it's just weird stories of sci-fi settings where trans people are biking or has something to do with biking, which is just such a niche topic. Oh, my voice broke. Topic, and I love that this exists. Love that it exists. I didn't love this, but of course all the stories are different, so I still wanted to mention it and talk about it. Some were great, some were less great, but very niche, and I love that for this book. And the last book I want to talk about is a book that I did not really enjoy, but I have heard that it has a great representation for non-binary lesbian character. So this follows our main character, Unnamed, who is an Australian non-binary person who goes and works at this all-girls boarding school in the UK, and they fall in love with the headmaster's wife, and it's sexy and steamy and is about their relationship and how they, main character, our headmaster, mistress, and all the other girls at this school, how they have such different experiences of the body that they were born with sexuality. I didn't like this because the sentence structure is really short and it didn't work for me, and neither did the plot. But it has a really beautiful relationship between our main character and another lesbian person who works at this boarding school, and their friendship was really endearing, and I enjoyed reading that in this book. So those are all the books that I wanted to recommend with you today that are transgendered, transsexual. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below if you know any trans booktubers, because I've been looking for them everywhere, but I'm having such a hard time finding them, because how would you if they just don't pop up on your feed or have specifically trans book recommendations on the internet? So comment that down below. Comment if you have any trans book recommendations for me that you think that I haven't read or that I need to read. I am reading trans books all the time, every single day. Well, it's not completely true, but almost. So subscribe if you haven't already to keep hearing about trans and queer books in the future. I wish you all an amazing, brilliant day, and I will talk to all of you soon. Bye!